Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I'm going to be working with the 49 and Market Willow Grove collection by Vicki Boutin and this sketch from Janessa Franco for Paper Issues. This layout was made for the Hop Stamp and Stencil Savvy, and in this hop we use our stamps and our stencils to create layouts, and every month there's a theme. And this month it was to stamp a rainbow or an ombre. So I wasn't sure exactly how to approach this. I thought as long as I'm using a stamp, I'm sure it's fine. Instead of using inks or ink pads, I decided to try out these Pearlescent liquid acrylics. These are by Daler and Rowney. The purple color that I'm using is called Moon Violet. I put that in the center, and then I wanted to make an ombre, so I lightened it up a little bit by using white pearl at the top, and I use a brush to mix the colors together. And then on the bottom I used black, and I did the same thing. I mixed it with the purple, hoping to create kind of an ombre. And I have to say, I never tried anything like this before. I just kind of had the idea because I had the inks, and I ended up really liking the way that this background turned out. I'm using a stamp from Simon Says Stamp. It's called Fractured Background. You could see that I stamped it once, and then I decided I better make the area in the background a little bit bigger, so I continued to stamp it, and I just thought that this turned out really cool. I really didn't know what to expect from doing this, but I thought that this worked pretty well. The only problem is, and I know that some people are not going to be happy with me, but I end up covering up a huge percentage of this background. I knew I wanted to use the sketch, and I kind of had a feeling I was going to cover up a lot of it. That's why I covered a lot of the background with it. But still, from following the sketch and adding a lot of flowers, I did end up covering up, I would say, the beauty of this background. But I'm really glad that I tried it out. But I feel bad because I'm showing you a technique and then I'm almost totally covering it up. But now I know how to make a background like this, and I definitely think I would use the same stamp again because I think that it created kind of a cool effect in the background. So I'm adding lots of splatters to the background. I wanted to kind of keep that ombre effect going. Not that it's so clear that it's ombre, but in my mind, it's a purple ombre. So I mix a lot of white into the purple for the top, and then I use the purple in the center and then mix the purple with the black on the bottom just to try to match the splatters somewhat to the colors that were already stamped on the page. And as I usually do, I'm using a piece of 120-pound smooth white cardstock that I've coated with some Liquitex gesso. And then I wanted to extend the area with the stamping even more, so I sprayed a little bit of water onto the stamp, and I added a little bit more to the left-hand side. And then maybe you just saw that piece of scrap paper. That was the only trial that I did. I wanted to try the technique out, and I was pretty happy with it. But I have to say, I think that this turned out even better, probably because I just used a piece of copy paper, and here I'm using a piece of gesso paper. And now I'm adding the stamping. So I use two different stamp pads. I use an Archival Ink from a Ranger, and the color is Hickory Smoke. And then I also use some Staz On ink in jet black, and I'm using a variety of different stamps that I have in my stash. I had a script stamp that I used. I have a mesh or a grid stamp, also a crackle stamp, and right now I'm using a dot stamp. And all of those stamps are stamps that I use very regularly on my scrapbooking backgrounds. So I wanted to add a bit more color. I liked the purple ombre, but I was thinking that I wanted to add another color. So I decided to use this Shimmerz Paints Coloringz called Orange You Glad. And I'm splattering that all around the background too. I'm trying to keep that Halloween black, purple, orange, and green color scheme in mind. There are many color schemes, but I think those are the most traditional Halloween colors. And then I also added some splatters of watered down acrylic paint. I added some white splatters, and then I also added some black splatters. I allowed the mixed media background to dry thoroughly. I have that flowered piece of paper. That's just a paper from my stash that I know I won't use. I'm going to use that to anchor everything too. The orange paper is from that 49 and Market Willow Grove collection. And then I use a piece of black cardstock from my stash. And I'm going to have a very thin border of black all around my mixed media background. I just like that combination, the black around the white and then with the brightly colored orange in the background. I put a whole bunch of ATG adhesive onto the mixed media background, and then I carefully position the mixed media background and I press it down. I noticed that even though I use a decent amount of ink on the background, it didn't warp a lot. I guess I didn't add as much liquid medium as I usually do. So this is a photo of my two daughters that was taken in 2019 in Salem, Massachusetts. We go there every year and we really love going there. This was a photo that was taken in October. We also go there in other times of the year to try to enjoy it when it's not filled with tons and tons of people. So I popped up my photo on some foam. I used some fun foam with the one side that has adhesive on it. And then I'm going to use this title. This is from the kit and it says October Magic. I'm inking the edges with some Distress ink in black soot. And then to add a little border around it to make it stand out, I found this piece of purple paper in my stash that I thought went really well with the purple in this collection. So I decided that I was going to attach the title down to this paper and then fussy cut it out while leaving a little bit of a purple mat all around the outside. And then I went ahead and I inked the purple layer as well. So I've been waiting for 49 and Market to come out with a Halloween collection for a really long time. And I really like it a lot, but it wasn't exactly what I expected. I thought that it would be a little bit more of that 49 and Market traditional collection where they have a lot of backgrounds with a lot of type and watercolors, and I thought there would be a couple of images of some Halloween related things in the background, but it was a little different than that. It was more of a traditional pattern paper pack. There were a couple of papers that looked a little bit like the 49 and Market vibe, but the rest of them looked more like Vicki Boutin's vibe, and she's the designer of this collection. But I'm really happy with it. I really liked the embellishments that were included. There were 3 different pages of embellishments, and from what I could tell, it only came in a pack. You could only buy the papers and the embellishments together in this one pack. But I'm really happy that they have expanded into Halloween, and I'm hoping that they continue to have collections like this. So going along with the sketch, I wanted to put some flowers on the right-hand side of the photo. It took me a little while to get the shape right on these flowers. They look a little square right now, but by the end, it's not perfect, but I think that it looks a little bit more like a circular wreath than it does at the beginning. So I took out some 49 and Market flowers of different colors. I had some black ones, I had some off-white ones, and I'm going to add a couple more colors in a little while. I'm using this thick matte gel medium. I think it's called Heavy Gel Medium. And the problem with this was that it was pretty dried out. So it did adhere the flowers to the background, but not as well as it would if it was a little bit less dried out. So at the end of this layout, or actually before the end of this layout, I threw this in the garbage. I decided that it just wasn't worth trying to force it to work when I have other gel medium that's newer and not quite so old and crusty. So yeah, I got rid of this one and now I have a brand new one. And now I'm tucking in a couple of little clusters. I think that I had these from various packs of flowers that I've used over the years. They were little odds and ends that I didn't use from different packs. So those were perfect for this layout because they all had similar colors to the ones that are in the photo. So the sketch that I'm using by Janessa Franco from Paper Issues is one of many sketches that you can find on the Paper Issues Facebook group. And there are lots of great sketches on the Paper Issues Facebook group. I've been looking on that Facebook group for years. And what I did was I took a whole bunch of sketches, and I love lots of different sketches that are on that Facebook group, but I really like the ones from Janessa Franco. They just really seem to inspire me. So I printed out a whole bunch of them, mainly the Janessa Franco ones. And I took one of my albums and I spent a couple of hours going through all of the photos that I had. They were tucked into pages, and then I matched them to a sketch, and I tucked the sketch into the pages of my scrapbook. And I'm hoping that that will not only help me to get an album done rather than the way that I've been working currently, which is one photo from one album, another photo from another album. I would like to get albums complete, but I think it'll also help me because I'll have the sketches ready, and I feel like that's something that I'm hoping will keep me from procrastinating or not knowing where to start. I think that it'll really help me to feel like I'm ready to go. So I'm going to try that out. I'll let you know how it goes. So one of my favorite embellishments in this kit was this spider web. It was really cool. I didn't use the whole thing. I used a little more than half of the spider web, so I have the other part of it to use on another layout. And then in addition to all the flowers that I added, I put a fence underneath the title. I also used these 2 branch die cuts to go on the ends of the wreath, so it would kind of give more of the effect of there being kind of like a half wreath there. And then there were these leaves that I thought were perfect because there are so many beautiful fall flowers in this photo, and I thought that the leaves kind of went along with them, both in subject matter and in color. So I was thinking that the wreath needed some other colors, probably a brighter color. So I found that I had these little tiny 49 and Market flowers in purple, and I was really happy that they were little. I think that it's nice to have a variety of different sizes when using a lot of the same embellishment like this. And I put 2 pumpkins over the word October. There were also jack-o'-lanterns, but I figured that since this particular photo looked a little bit more fall than it did Halloween, I still want to bring the Halloween element into it, that I would concentrate more on the fall aspect of the embellishments, and then I can use the jack-o'-lanterns and the other items that are clearly related to Halloween for some other layouts that I'm thinking I'm going to be making soon. So now I'm adding some highlights to the flowers. I'm using some heavy gesso. I've had this same container of heavy gesso for years, and there's like something wrong with the cover. It's a little warped, so it doesn't close all the way. So every time I'm done using this gesso, I spray some water on the top, but I think I'm losing the battle. I think that this is drying out a little bit more than I was hoping. I'm not sure if it could be revived, but for right now, I'm just going to keep using the same strategy, spray some water on it, and hope that it doesn't dry out to the point that I can't use it. So I took a bristle brush and I just dabbed a little bit of the gesso on all of the flowers. I wanted there to be some highlights. They're not as visible on those off-white flowers, but you could really see the highlights a little bit better on the black flowers. And then I love the little bats in the upper right-hand corner. I think that my favorite embellishment for Halloween layouts is flying bats. I think that it just makes the layout look really cool. Now I'm using some Dress My Craft flower pearls in black, and I'm adding those to the black flowers to give them a little bit of texture. I actually did this earlier, but I guess my camera wasn't recording. But here you could see that I'm mixing these really super, super tiny little pearls with some gel medium. And then I'm using my paintbrush to spread those little pearls on the black flowers. So here I'm adding some orange pearls. I only had one color and one size of orange pearls. I usually like to add these in different sizes, but I didn't have any other sizes, so I just add a couple of little touches of orange. I didn't want to go crazy, but I thought that adding this orange would help to tie this area with the flowers in it to the title and to the border going all the way around the edge of the layout. I just thought it needed a little bit of orange, and I thought that pearls were kind of a nice way to do that. And I'm attaching those down with some glossy accents. So I liked the wreath, but I felt like it was missing something. So I decided that I was going to add some flowers in a different color, and I decided to use some alcohol ink to change these off-white flowers to a little bit more of a rusty color. And to do that, I used an artsy alcohol ink in pumpkin. And I just very simply squeezed the color onto the flower, and it was dry in a few minutes, and then I was able to add it to my layout. And here I'm using some Aleene's gel glue to attach those flowers down. And although I'll use it occasionally, I don't work with alcohol ink that often, but I was really happy to see how easily the color on the flowers was changed by using it. I saw it on a YouTube video once, and I just kind of kept that in mind, and now I'm glad that I saw that video and that I can add a little bit of variety to the colors in my wreath by using the alcohol ink. I wouldn't have thought that this color would have turned the flowers the color that it did, but I was really happy with this color. I think that it was the perfect addition to the wreath. So this part didn't go exactly as I had imagined. I don't dislike it, but I guess I was thinking that it would be a little bit more grungy looking. I took some cheesecloth and I pulled it apart a little bit, but I probably could have pulled it apart a little bit more. I've just had the experience of pulling it apart too much and then trying to add it to my layout, so I wanted to be a little bit more conservative about having a lot of threads hanging off. And then I took those pieces and I tucked them into a couple of different areas going around the wreath, just so there would be little bits of the cloth kind of peeking out from a couple of different places. And I think that if I wanted the layout to look a little bit more grungy, I could go back in with my scissors and kind of pull apart some of these little clumps of cheesecloth, and that would make a few more strings visible and might make the layout look a little bit more grungy, but I'm perfectly happy with the way that it looks now. One thing that I always like to add to any kind of floral clusters is branches. So I use some black cardstock and a die that I had in my stash. It's an unbranded die from quite a while ago. It has little tiny flowers and also little swirls on these branches that I cut out, and I thought that this would be a good complement to this particular wreath because I like the little scrolls. I think that little scrolls go well with Halloween themes. And then I cut those larger die cuts into smaller pieces so I could tuck them all around, not only the flowers but also by the title. So earlier I forgot to mention that I added some Prima art pebbles to a couple of different places on the wreath. One I put in a funny spot, kind of in the middle of the wreath. I ended up covering that up with a flower because I just felt like that was a weird choice. Not sure what made me do that. And then there are a couple along the perimeter that are a little bit visible. I didn't add too many of them. I actually dropped the entire container of them on my layout and I had to pick them all up. So I was kind of done with them after I dropped them and didn't add too many more. So I added a little die cut spider to the spider web, and then I used my glue and attached everything down that wasn't already attached down. And this layout is complete, and here are some close-ups. So I'm not sure if this is a fail because there is no visible ombre on my page, but I was really happy that I got my momentum going again, and I made a layout that I felt pretty good about, even if I'm sorry that I covered up all of the stamping that I did. So I can't wait to see what other people in this hop are doing with this theme. So check out the playlist in the description box. You could see all of the videos there. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you have a fantastic day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.